So it is my pleasure to present to you this presentation uh-oh, on deschooling, unschooling, and secular homeschooling, navigating the homeschooling landscape as a new homeschooling parent. And it's really a pleasure to have you here because I know that you've done so much for the homeschooling community. And so I expect not only some of this information to be new, but for you to also share some of your expertise when you're working with some of the homeschooling families you have over the past few years. So I know that for the most part, everyone pretty much knows that I homeschool my daughter off and on um, throughout P through her P through 12 education. And so that's 2007 to 2021. We graduated her from our homeschool. In 2021, she was dual enrolled, doing her 4 years of high school for homeschool for high school. And she earned an associate's degree. She's currently in her third and last year of college at the University of San Francisco on full scholarship. I'm so proud of my baby. I also co-edited a book that came out in 2022, Homeschooling Black Children in the U.S., Theory, Practice, and Popular Culture. Edited that with Dr. Cheryl Field Smith. I also have a blog. Now, this blog has been in existence since 2006, and it began as a youth development blog. I've been in education, youth development for most of my career, uh, over 30 years now. And so the blog began shortly after I was certified as an advancing youth development facilitator. Advancing youth development is a foundational theory to really all that I do when I work with young people, my own child included. And it really is a theory that I will talk, I feel like an evangelist really when I talk about it, because I think it fundamentally gives language to a lot of the things that we know intuitively is what works best, but it puts it into language that is easy to convey to other practitioners, whether they're educators, parents, or both. One of the foundational beliefs of advancing youth development theory is that in order for young people to take advantage of opportunities, there need to be services and supports in place for those opportunities to be realized. A service is something that you do for a young person, a support is something that you do with them. It also is a theory that really pushes back against adultism, gives language to the ways that we disenfranchise young people, and understands that young people are always in an active state of youth development, positive or otherwise. And so if we're aware that youth development is going to happen, regardless of whether or not we are contributing to that youth development, then it is in our best interest to do our best to help with the positive development of young people. And so that has been foundational to the work that I do with young people as a youth practitioner, but also as a parent. So, I worked with young people before I even became a parent. So a lot of those things that I was doing with young people before I became a parent, I excitedly implemented into my parenting practice. And so really homeschooling my parenting practice have become singular. I this is my daughter over the years. This is actually, these two pictures are from just a few months ago. So we still, she's 20 now. We still do field trips, experiential learning, a lot of the things, regular discourse, a lot of these things are what are inherent in the parent daughter relationship that we have that was really foundational in our homeschooling experience. So, as I introduce myself, I would love to know, is there anything in particular that you came to this workshop wanting to know in particular? And I can tell you now whether it's something that I've included or I can make space for it towards the end of my presentation. Anything in particular?
I don't think so. I think really what I'm trying to unravel is my lack of confidence in teaching elementary
Mm,
because I'm secondary doesn't bother me because that's obviously my wheelhouse. That's where I taught, I taught 6 to 12. And even though I taught, some third and fourth and fifth graders, that was only for 1 year, and it was just language arts, you know what I mean? Or they
Mm-hmm.
didn't call it that; they called it literacy. So I think what I want to know is just as far as how can I really make sure that I am supporting. Also, his homeschooling collective also needs more support, and
Mm.
how could I lend them more support? It's you know the story, Khadijah. Just I,
But let me pause, because this is the thing that is really interesting to me, because you are you said, and I'm going to mirror back to you what you said, that you have a handle on the middle grades because that's what you've taught. But you are concerned about elementary age mainly because you weren't a teacher in of elementary age children, but you received children who went through elementary education, and you basically had to compensate for the areas of the lack of learning and things. So in a way, you have taught those grades and above, because all the children were not at the same level when they came to you. All right, that's my first reaction. My second reaction is that even this hesitancy in being prepared or feeling prepared for elementary age is you still operating from a space of traditional learning space, because what you are doing is take into consideration what your experiences were in a traditional learning space. But even though you inherently know that homeschooling can look any way that you want, and that you have every single tool to navigate that space, because you have taught other parents and you are teaching other parents on how to navigate that space. So it's my duty to just remind you that. And so what in this presentation, what I'm going to go through is I'm going to talk about the methodology, I'm going to talk about the curriculum, and some of these things are going to ring familiar, but more questions are most likely going to come up, because what you're going to realize that it's not that you don't know, it's this comfort level, because what you have been trained as a student in traditional spaces and as a teacher within traditional spaces. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about assessment, because I think that is also what you're talking about when you even talk about being prepared. You're concerned about what are those outcomes. Oh, how are you going to be able to assess that you were successful? Again, in this mindset of success looks a certain way when I know that my child has mastered XYZ. So I'm here to coach you, to remind you of who you are, and to also to give you that language so that you know that you have this covered, but just to remind you about what in the homeschool and what some of this language is commonly when we talk about this in this culture. Okay. Veronica, thank you for joining us. I had just put on a question on the floor before I even begin my presentation. If there's anything in particular that led you to come to this workshop, any question that you already have, so I can let you know if we're going to talk about it, or I can make a note to include it towards the end of my presentation. Anything in particular?
No, I'm just here to listen and learn.
Okay, well,
If something
welcome.
comes in, I will jump in.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being here. What I've done already is just introduced a little bit about myself. And these pictures that you're looking at are pictures of my daughter throughout the years. She currently is a student at the University of San Francisco. She's in her third and final year there. But I homeschooled her from 2007 to 2021, off and on, throughout her P through 12 education. She did earn an associate's degree while she was homeschooling for high school, because she was dual enrolled in community college. And so for those who are new to homeschooling, when they ask me questions, before I even say anything, I always urge folks to know what their legal requirements are for their individual states. Homeschooling is something where it is not a federal mandate regarding homeschooling. So as someone who lives in Maryland, I can't tell someone who lives in Texas or Louisiana or New York what the up-to-date information is. I was really knowledgeable in 2019 when I conducted my research of what was out there at the time, but things have changed over the years. Even my state of Maryland just recently came out with numbers regarding homeschooling students. I know we have to register with the state if we plan to homeschool, meaning that if we are homeschooling our children, they get a student ID just like traditional school students do. So with it, for instance, in my situation, my daughter she attended public school for a while, and then I would pull her out. And so that what was consistent was that student ID number. I continuously had to update the homeschooling office of our county whether or not we were going to be homeschooling, and if not, enrolling her in school, and if so, unenrolling her from school. But the school continued to track what was happening in terms of her enrollment. All states do not do that. All states do not have requirements. The state of Maryland, we have to do a portfolio review, which means every quarter, a designee from the state will look over. We will send a portfolio, which is just a snapshot of the things that we've done over the year, and they will make a determination as to whether or not learning has been taking place. It's really subjective. They've tried to make it more akin to a traditional school assessment in terms of even the way that they're like the checklist looks like a transcript. That's not what it looked like when I began homeschooling. And so because I homeschooled from 2007 to 2021, I have seen the differences in terms of what those requirements look like. So that's why it's very important for you to get up-to-date information from your state. Some of the ways that you can find that information include you can go to your state education department website. You can register with the state umbrella organization. And I use the term umbrella because that's common here in Maryland. I'm not sure if that is, from the Facebook group that Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars has, I know some folks from other states have used the word umbrella, but I still, even as a researcher, I haven't been hip to whether and how consistent that is among states. But in Maryland, an umbrella organization is an organization that has gotten permission from the state to basically be a designee. So when I mentioned that we had to do a portfolio review, there's some organizations, most of them are through churches, where they have permission to do the portfolio review on behalf of the state. And then you will go to them, they will look over the portfolio, and then they would give that information to the respective county on that homeschooling child. And then you can visit a homeschooling organization website that you trust. Many people use HSLDA. They are the most powerful and most prevalent homeschooling organization, for better or for worse, that is out there, that is able to lobby on behalf of homeschooling. It's a white evangelical organization that sometimes has things that conflict with my ethics and values, and so I don't recommend them to other people, but I do know that many people use, and they offer a lot of free resources on the internet that are up to date. One of the things that I appreciate about HSLDA is that they offer legal support to homeschoolers who are having challenges in their state to be able to homeschool without pushback from the state. If there is some things that a parent may overlook when it comes to requirements, or even if there's something where someone in a state who is overstepping their boundary, HSLDA, and that's really how they began as a organization that offers legal support to homeschooling families. Many people are able to become a member of HSLDA, but they are not the only group. I know Time for Learning, I think that's the website. They also you can go there and they have a chart where you can see, you click on it, But I personally would recommend going directly to your state education department because that's what they did. That's what they any other website is going to the State Department or finding out directly from the state before they put the information on their website. And this is from my years of being a professor. And what I tell my students, don't ask your classmates, you ask me. I don't care what your classmates told you about what was due or what the assignment was. If you didn't look in the syllabus, then that's on you. Your students aren't teaching the class. I am. My syllabus is the Bible of this class. And so that's what I recommend everyone is really to find out directly from the state if it's possible. Other organizations and other websites may be helpful in showing you where to go or how to contact someone at the state education department for information. But I would recommend you becoming adept at being in communication and receiving information from your state directly. So when we even are, so this is an example of my county. My county has an actual homeschool office. I know all states do not have their own homeschooling office, but they may. So you need to check and you need to find out how that information, how those requirements are disseminated to homeschoolers and what those requirements are before you begin homeschooling. And that allows you to be compliant. You'll hear that word often: compliance, requirements, policies. All of those things are necessary for you to be aware of, that homeschooling is definitely a choice, but it often, if you do not follow the policies to be compliant, then you are at risk of your child being considered truant. And in some states, it is against the law for a child not to be enrolled in school. So please be mindful of what those regulations are. And so once you have done what needs to be done to be compliant to begin homeschooling, I think that the first thing that should be on your agenda is to identify your child's needs and learning styles. Some people may ask, how do you not know already what your child's needs and learning styles are? Some of us, we may be aware, but we may not have the knowledge or the language. I always talk about the language because language is what connects us. Language is cultural. And homeschooling is a culture, all right? And so a lot of the language that we use allows us, when we're communicating with each other, to be on the same page. Even if the action itself is something that we've done before, it may be called something different outside of homeschooling. So this language is really important. And so that's really what how I came up with this workshop, is to familiarize you with the language that is often used. So we talk about child's needs and their learning styles, right? Tailoring your approach to accommodate their learning style, whether your child is a visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learner. So if you're not a teacher, if you're not coming from this environment, you're like, what in the hell? What are you talking about? So when we talk about a visual learner, we're talking about someone who needs to see or prefers to see, needs to have some type of visual in front of them while someone is speaking, or sometimes instead of someone speaking. What you probably don't realize is that folks who prefer to read are visual learners. I am a visual learner. I do not like people calling me and asking me anything over the phone if they're expecting a definitive answer, if I don't have something written in front of me so that I can read in advance or as they are talking to me. All right. I am a visual learner. There are people that listen better. A lot of folks who prefer like podcasts or really prefer an audio book to an actual book, are folks who are auditory. We have kinesthetic learners who like to be able to touch or to move or to have some connectivity to the activity at hand. And then you have folks who, there are all types of modalities that are out there, but for the most part, what you may not necessarily need to know the language of all of the learning styles, but you need to know how your child shows up as a learner. All right. This can be from what you can have a conversation with them. This can be something that you observe. This is something that you can get based on feedback if your child has already been in a traditional school setting. And as I talk about traditional school settings, I'm referencing, I'm talking about a public school setting, private school, charter school, this idea of school, apart from homeschooling. That's what I'm usually referring to when I say traditional school. And many people, like myself, as I opened with, my child she attended both public and private schools at points during her trajectory. And some, feedback from teachers or past experience gave me some idea of who she was as a learner, but I also was always observing, always taking inventory of what she gravitated towards in order to in any type of learning situation. Also having discussions with her. I engaged in open discussions with her about her preferences and her experiences in learning. I asked her questions about what types of activities she enjoyed, how she preferred to study, and if there were ways or things that were more effective than maybe something that I was attempting to employ because I was familiar with it as an instructor, or something that I myself preferred as a learner. One of the things that I would say is going to be the most challenging for you as an educator, as a home educator, is disconnecting your own journey and your own needs as a learner from what you are implementing with your child. And I don't think that that is just something that we are challenged with as homeschooling parents. I think that is something as a parent you hear all the time. I want to do better for my child than what I got. My child's going to have it better than me. And all that ideology in itself is looking at your child as another you, when the reality is your child is someone who is independent they are an individual person who has come into this human journey with a set of needs, experiences, wants that are separate from you. Whether or not you have provided the space for them to articulate it is definitely a different subject in itself. But for the most part, they are not you. And I know that was something that has been an ongoing realization, and something that I've really had to take note of it. And having discussions with my daughter and allowed me to reflect on that throughout my parenting journey with her through homeschool. I have a YouTube video about just the beginnings of this homeschooling journey with my daughter. It's called The Positive Impact of Homeschooling Black Children, that I would recommend for those who are just starting your journey, because I'm very honest with the reasons why homeschooling was a choice for my daughter, who was a child who was actually academically successful within a public school setting, but there were certain things that were impacting what I looked at as her love of learning. And that to me was the biggest sin. If we're talking about, that was problematic for me, is that I saw her experience going in a direction where she would not, after a while in the system, still enjoy learning, even though she was what was considered, academically successful. She was labeled talented and gifted and all these things. But what was that learning experience? So that's in this video. So after you learn the regulations, you identify your child's learning style, then you engage in what is called deschooling. So this is one of those terms that we talk about, deschooling. There's some more that are coming down the pike, right? But deschooling, what is deschooling? Well, deschooling is a process in which individuals, especially those transitioning from traditional school environments to alternative education or homeschooling, where they take time to adjust, and disengaged from the ingrained habits and expectations associated with conventional schooling. And so the term deschooling was popularized by educational theorist Ivan Illich in his book, Deschooling Society, and he advocated for rethinking the traditional education system. Typically, what homeschoolers mean with deschooling is that before you jump into this replication of a traditional school setting where you basically have taken your children out of this school, right? Set up these desks in your house, your chalkboard, and basically where you have the exact same setting where you just took them out of, you are giving yourself a break. You may be during this deschooling period, have these conversations, these reflective conversations with them around who they are as learners. You may be assessing what your resources are. I feel like a lot of the people who joined the Facebook group that Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars has, this is part of their deschooling process with trying to learn about this homeschooling culture. But what it is where you are taking a pause to get your bearings, and to get your mind right. So as I was saying to B. Sharice earlier, where she was expressing concern, maybe I have some concern about elementary age because I've taught middle school. That deschooling period is like, yes, this is what you know, but assessing what is it that you want? And there's a middle ground where you can start to see that what you want is something that you can create, which may be something that you've never had before. And that doesn't mean that you're unprepared. It means that this is new. And so what you're confronting now is this confidence thing. A lot of homeschooling or new homeschooling parents will realize that they may not have the confidence to embark on this because we don't have a lot of examples. This is not a culture where we've had parents, our ancestors. Oh yes, we don't have a history of homeschooling. So because of that, our confidence may be lacking. So deschooling is a great period of time to kind of build our confidence, to know that this is something that is possible, a possible lifestyle for our family. And so our deschooling process included all sorts of things, really assessing what were our resources that we had in the house. This picture right here where she's sitting in front of the bookshelf is where she was going through books that we had all throughout the house. She was identifying a space that she wanted to be her corner for books. And I gave her shelves that were in her reach, that she had ownership of. We did a lot of creative play. Trips have always been normative in our family, whether she was in school or not, but we still were engaging in learning experiences, even though they weren't necessarily structured. And so that's really what deschooling looked like for us. I also recommend to families, and something that I do regularly as well. And for those who participated in the welcome this morning, I talked about how a vision board is akin to a mission statement. During your deschooling period, you may want to develop a mission statement to identify what type of learning experience you want to create for your child. And I say create for your child, but I also use interchangeably curate, because a lot of times when we think of curating, we're thinking of a museum where a curator came and determined what this exhibit would look like. And the things that we see before us aren't necessarily things that the curator themselves created. They may be pulled from different artists. They may be historical artifacts that existed long before the curator did, but the curator had the design and the idea in mind as to what this exhibit was going to look like, and made it a cohesive experience. And so you are the curator of your child's learning experience. You may not always be the one that will facilitate the instruction. You may not always be the one who is determining what exactly, you want them to learn math, but you're not going into the micro as to how that's going to be laid out for them. But you're curating what some of these general outcomes are that you want for your child. And so this is what goes into this mission statement. Many parents have like math phobia or some challenges themselves as learners and say, I can't homeschool because I didn't do well in that area in school. That is what comes out with a mission statement assignment, is that you are confronting these things, these issues that you have regarding certain subjects, school itself. Some people had really awful experiences in a traditional school setting, so they have no idea what could be possible. Well, this is when you think about it. What could be possible? And so you've already assessed and learned about your child's learning styles, their interests, their experiences prior to you embarking on homeschooling. Allow that to inform now your development of this mission statement. I have a video where I talk about getting started on with homeschooling. It's on my YouTube channel, Liberated Muse. I think I also included it on the Black Family Homeschool Educators and Scholars channel. But if you'd like a link to that, I can share that with you. But it's also on my blog, where I'll give you the website later, where it talks about just, it's a very introductory video about the importance of a mission statement. But sample mission statements can look anything, like anything, including, these are some examples. Mission statement example 1, our homeschool is a living laboratory. Every day, our learners will engage in investigating a question. We will use the natural world as our classroom and allow our learners to determine the questions that are answered and the tools they will use. Another example, our child will learn math, science, English, music, and foreign language through online resources, hired instruction, and curriculum sourced lovingly and with care. It can look like anything you want it to look like, but this becomes the guiding principle of your homeschool. Then you have methodology options. When we talk about a method, we're talking about a method that's going to impact the curriculum choices that you have, your budget, your resources. It's the practice, the things that are going to go specifically into how you organize your homeschool practice, okay? And so there are different methodologies that exist that people draw from. One term that I'm sure you've heard, and you may or may not have known what it was when you heard it, unschooling. So unschooling is an alternative approach to education that emphasizes a child-led and interest-driven learning experience. Unlike traditional schooling, unschooling does not follow a predetermined curriculum or set of subjects. Instead, it relies on the natural curiosity and interest of the child to guide their learning process. Some unschoolers refuse to even refer to themselves as homeschoolers because there is immediately more of a connection to homeschooling and curriculum, whereas unschoolers are adamant that they are not tethered to this idea of a curriculum. What I will tell you is that unschooling in itself has many iterations within, but when we hear child-led interest and we're talking about interest-driven learning, we're not talking about saying, hey, you like riding bikes? Go ride your bike all day. Go ahead, have fun with it. Bye-bye. And the child is off on their own. It's understanding that if a child likes to ride their bike, within that practice of riding their bike, there can be a lesson learned about math. When you think about distance that they may be traveling, there can be activities about well, math and measurement, same thing. There can be about, it could be an art lesson where maybe they're designing their own bike, but there's so many things that, when we think of the gamut of subjects from math and music to English and science, that can be contained within something that the child enjoys. And there's anything that you think of can become a lesson. My daughter, is really into plants, and through her love of plants, were able to incorporate so many subjects from math and science to music and art. And it was actually fantastic. This was during her last 4 years. And I can talk more about that if you have questions. But these are some other methodologies: classical education, the Charlotte Mason method, named after British educator Charlotte Mason. This method emphasizes a literature-based approach to education. It focuses on living books, nature study, and the idea that children learn best through direct experience. And nature exploration is something that those who practice Charlotte Mason method really engage in. Classical education, you'll hear that a lot, is based on the ancient model of learning known as the trivium, which consists of 3 stages: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. We also have the Waldorf method, developed by Rudolf Steiner. Waldorf believes that education is holistic and it should focus on nurturing a child's physical, emotional, and spiritual development. And it doesn't necessarily believe in stages that a child should be reading by this. It allows for certain skill sets to evolve while children, it really emphasizes creative play. And again, this intuitive development that will take place when a child is actively engaged, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Then you have Montessori education, developed by Dr. Maria Montessori. A lot of folks know about Montessori because they know how expensive it is if you're trying to get your child into a Montessori school. Montessori and Waldorf. But Montessori is by far one of the more common practices that I've seen homeschoolers engage in, and it emphasizes the use of specially designed materials to foster independence and exploration. And then there's the eclectic learning, and that's what I engaged in, where it's flexible and a personalized approach that draws from various educational philosophies and methods. Homeschoolers using this approach tailor their curriculum based on the individual needs and the interests of their children. And so where you may have self-directed learning happening as if as it does in unschooling, there are some elements of it that are more structured and tailored to what it is that your child does. I will tell you that we eclectically homeschooled, and we were assisted on this learning journey through public programs, co-ops and collectives, family excursions. This picture up here, I homeschooled my nephew for a while with my daughter, and at this time, Microsoft had a camp for kids where they were trying to sell they were trying to get your kids to enroll so that they can get your kids to ask you to buy them. Please buy me the Surface, please buy me. This is when all of their tablets and things were new. But they would do these demos, and so they would teach the kids filmmaking, graphic design, all of these things using these devices that they wanted you to buy for your kids. But the children would become certified because they would have engaged, and I think they even did rudimentary coding. But that's a rare example of a corporation that has a program and it was free. But definitely there are public programs through museums, co-ops and collectives. We really weren't active that much in co-ops, but this particular co-op that she's looks so happy. She's selling her rum cake. She made some rum cake. They had the assignment, they had to sell things at a farmer's market, but the collective really had the children, it was a homesteading co-op. And so the children would meet at these people's house. They had chickens in the back. They had a farm, and the children were taught how to make different home products with the things that were farmed or grown on the farm or came from the chickens. It was a fantastic experience. We still talk about this, and this was over 10 years ago. And so I wanted to also put on here apprenticeships, creative play, and scheduled instruction. And she taught herself how to play her musical instrument, and then she was able to engage with her father, who's an instrumentalist, and he would teach her musical theory. But I have here apprenticeships. I have an arts organization that I've had for the past 15 years. She has done everything. She's probably about 7 here. She was introducing an act. She has been tech. She has served as a technical support. She's been a stage manager. She actually in middle school, she was trained in theater. She had more theater training than me, and I'm a playwright and have an arts company. And so she would give notes to us. And she was my assistant director. So she was actually employed by my company, but because she had been doing this since she was a young person, she didn't even look at it or realize that this was a learning opportunity that many children her age have never had. And so these are the kinds of things that we can think about. What are the things that we as adults are doing to bring money into the home? We can create apprenticeship and internship opportunities for our children.
I remember Khadijah when she escorted me in the green room. Remember when I was on Tarek's show?
Yes.
She was back in the green room with me, making sure I had my snacks and everything was okay. She took my coat.
Yep.
She was what, maybe like 10? This was like 2010 or something like that.
By that time, she had been accompanying me to shows and things for at least 6 years. It's something I posted on Instagram yesterday. This hilarious footage. I was performing at this festival that's defunct now, the Green Fest, that used to come to DC. And I was performing on stage, and she's like 4, and she's just on stage with me. She would just come on stage uninvited, and because she knew all the songs, and sometimes she decided she wanted to sing along, sometimes not, but she's just standing on stage. So these are things that I don't want parents to sell themselves short. If there are things that you are doing to bring money into the home for the family, I'm sure of it, that there is some way that you can bring your child into your world as for them to learn this skill set as well. It's, homeschooling really allowed me to stop looking at things so segmented as she's not old enough to do this, or this is only for middle schoolers, or this is for high schoolers, or this is what we do in elementary school. That really came through that schooling process. This was actually right before she started college. She was in a program with our county where the young people that got accepted in the program designed the Black History Month poster for the county. And so it was for visual artists, and she's a filmmaker. But when she got with the group, she was like, I really want to contribute a poem, and just changed up their whole and they were like, okay. And so she wound up writing the poem that appears on the poster. So, the only thing I can say beware of is that you're going to create some wonderfully independent children who are really going to show up in spaces with a mind of their own. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. And then I'm going to end on curriculum. It's not much to be said, except for we know what curriculum is. It's the way that we approach learning. Some people think of curriculum as a traditional textbook, online programs. Some curriculum emphasizes or is non-religion. Oh, excuse me, or is religious. It includes the readings of religious texts, religious worship, and religious theory as regular elements of instructional content. Some curriculum is Pan-African or Afrocentric, where it focuses on the interconnectedness of African cultures globally, aiming to foster a sense of unity among people of African descent. You have curriculum that is immersion. I put world schooling here because some folks consider the curriculum is the traveling, going to different countries and learning, being immersed in a different culture, and that itself is a learning curriculum. But I talk about how you are the curriculum. You can create your own curriculum from the things that I just talked about, like how, I incorporated my daughter in our business, and the things that she really took to, or things that were she had seen or were familiar with. We created curriculum around her interests. And so this is my blog that I keep up, soyaonline.wordpress.com. And there are a couple of posts on there that I think might be helpful to go further into what curriculum is, what it could be. I want you to first think about yourself being the curriculum as well. I also have an article on there about why social media, mailing lists, and new email addresses may help you homeschool better. And largely is so that you can sign up for mailing lists, because some of the invaluable resources that were part of my homeschooling journey included libraries, museums, nonprofit organizations, 4-H, music stores, independent artists, parks and recreation, nature centers, community colleges, fraternities and sororities, churches and spiritual centers, specialty shops. All of these places offer workshops, classes, free activities. They had spaces for us to visit. Parks and Recreation offered science classes. My daughter took science classes, gymnastics, languages, all types of classes from Parks and Recreation. We utilized the Parks and Recreation so much through our homeschooling experience that they actually appointed me to the advisory board for 1 year, because I was like a regular. I showed up at all the meetings, and I probably had enrolled her in activities in centers throughout our county. And so I just don't want you to think in this traditional mindset that what learning can be, or that you have to facilitate everything. Independent artists, I love to brag on the fact that my daughter had one-on-one instruction from my Mona Youssef, who is a Grammy-nominated artist who's local to our community, but she is a global artist. She's performed with The Roots. She has one of the highest viewed Tiny Desk videos that they have. She's an amazing artist, and she also offers workshops. I think she does that in between shows and things like that, because she's very community minded. And my daughter signed up for a workshop. She was the only one. She had one-on-one instruction with my Mona Youssef, who taught her how to set up a mobile studio. And so my daughter does music production and writes songs, and she learned that firsthand from a Grammy-nominated artist. So these are the things that really were invaluable to our journey. So at this time, I would love to know if you have any questions for me. Anything that I didn't touch on. 45 minutes is really quick, but I hope that I gave you a good snapshot on how to start. Any questions? How you feeling, B. Cherise? Oh, there's Veronica.
I'm feeling okay. I think my life just needs more organization. My question is, did you sit down and write lesson plans? Did you write, or at least unit plans, maybe not individual daily lesson plans, but did you write unit plans? Did you all have summers off? How did you go about that?
So I will tell you, I was very schoolish when I first started, when she was in elementary school. I think of fifth grade in particular. I had my lesson plans, and I implemented a syllabus. And the syllabus was used more as a checklist for her, but that's how far in advance I had things planned, like a syllabus. So for those who have been in college, the syllabus is the whole semester. So I had the whole semesters planned out. And yes, I printed out, I had assignments, I had worksheets and all those things for her. That lasted about 4 months until I got a grip. Because what was happening was she was doing the work, and she used the syllabus as a checklist. So she raced through it. She did what I needed just so she could then go to make her doll houses with the boxes that we had in the house. And so it was a replication of traditional school. And so after a while, I realized that we could still read books, so she could still read, but I gave her more autonomy on choosing what she wanted to read. field trips became our learning experiences. So I didn't need her she was going to write. This is the thing, is that Kari's been writing, and it was never anything that I assigned. She was going to write. What, for me to be able to assess, I would have warm-up activities, but I would teach her new forms of writing. So one of the things that I really enjoyed was the 10-sentence short story, because that helped build her ability to come up with a story idea in a condensed amount of sentences, but to have a build and end and all of those things, which ultimately gave her the format necessary to write the longer pieces that she writes now. She's an English major, in case anyone cares, and she just got commissioned to write a poem. She got paid more than I have gotten paid. I am the poet laureate of our county. This girl be making more money than me. Okay. So I just need you to know that all of these things that they're doing when they are in showing interest, I very early on, as soon as she learned how to read, she began to write. That was something that I saw, and I would make space so that no one would kill that. And that was a large reason why we started to homeschool, is because her teachers were out of their damn mind. And I say in the video, in case you haven't seen it, one of her teachers asked me to talk to her so she start writing her journal, and she would put her head down when she finished taking tests, because she was disrupting the other kids because they wanted to write too. And I said, no, that's insane. You are crazy. And so those things, though, you can know as early as elementary school what your child is expressing interest in and help them hone that craft. But no, to your answer, I did it and then I stopped. Field trips really worked for our family. Veronica, did you have a question? You're muted.
Cherise, because we connected online and have never met in person, but I'm a big fan. So
yes.
I just know this is an all Maryland crew, which is kind of fun. No, I just thank you. It's first year in, and just trying to, we did some deschooling. He's in a tutorial, and I think it's, kind of trying to keep myself from going super organized, and letting him lead. And I think this kind of like second half of the year, I'm feeling a little bit like, okay, if he just wants to play Legos all day, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like he did, and he spent the whole day listening to an audiobook, then Donnie Simpson, and yeah, he loves Donnie Simpson.
That's
so he's
fantastic.
broke up and he's fine.
That's fantastic.
And built his Legos on his own, and said he wanted to do it independently, and kind of just going back and checking the standards for the county just to make sure, but then not freaking myself out too much and being like, we have to put all this in, and I have to make sure he has appropriate African American history that's real, and knowing that like we have time, and we've been cultivating that history since he was.
Can I speak to that? Because what we did, what I did, I often went to the standards after. I don't know if that will work for everyone. But I would, because what I learned was that there was always something that we did that they have in the standards. And what you have to show in the portfolio is evidence that you engaged in learning. But that learning doesn't necessarily have to be on a handout. It can be demonstrated through a picture. Right. So I am a voracious, I've photographed everything. I sicken my family with the pictures that I take. And so you're going to know what we did. And so most of the things that I submitted in portfolio reviews were pictures and video. And I would have her do presentations as well. And those would be the things that I would submit. The state didn't ask specifically for things to be matching the standards, but that language, again, when we talk about the language, because most of the people doing the portfolio review are teachers who have this very warped sense a lot of times of what homeschooling is, that is when you put on your translation hat and you start to speak back to them in the language that they are familiar with, so that they don't it's not even co-op, so they don't invalidate and dismiss what it is that you're doing in your home. And because chances are you're going to do the standards and more in your homeschooling experience. It's inevitable, but you have to have the vision and the lens in recognizing that these children are often in a position to learn more in a shorter amount of time, because they're not confined to the segmented day that happens during the school day. And even if they don't realize it, because I am surprised with the fact that I don't have horror stories like a lot of homeschoolers have about people just coming incorrectly to them and like, are you sure you should be homeschooling? I think a lot of folks know me to be highly educated, so the stereotypes they have. I didn't get my doctorate till my child's last year of school, right? But I guess because I can read, I don't know. I didn't get a lot of the pushback, but my daughter on her own, she would get angry because people were like, why aren't you in school? What are you doing here during the day? You know, and then what are you doing when you homeschool? And she was like, we went to see a play. What? That's not, because in her mind, she doesn't see all of this learning taking place. All of the things to her that are normal are learning activities that she's able to do, but because it's not such an uncomfortable and unpleasant experience, it's not this idea that we have a traditional schooling. Alicia, I see you, and you got off camera. How you doing? Do you have a question for me?
No, I just wanted to say that I know Veronica, we met through our tutorial, and so we sort of support each other when we're about to have a breakdown that we're not doing enough. So I just wanted to say that the whole day has been really good. I was like, I don't know if they're gonna have me for a whole 6 hours, but this has been outstanding and very helpful. So I'm just juggling being working full-time outside of the house, 3 days at home and 2 days in the office, and then trying to make sure that I'm doing enough and that he's getting what he needs. And so
yes, the doing enough. That is a common homeschool mama parent refrain in the early stages, because after a while you realize, right, Kendra? You realize that not only are you doing enough, you are doing enough plus more, right? Jade, she said, when she said, I'm sick of homeschooling, right? Because after a while, and it's not that you're sick of homeschooling so much as this is just so normative. You ready for them to just fly. You ready for them to fly. It gets to the point that they are so empowered and so prepared that the next step is for them, really, I'm not going to say to leave your house completely, but to have an experience where it's not necessarily something that you have to curate. And so I am so pleased to be in this position. You know, for those who are part of the Facebook group, where I announced this week that it's going to be archived soon. I'm working on the book with the folks who have submitted to work on this book. But for the most part, I'm giving myself permission to do other things right now. Homeschooling is not something I want to focus on right now because I have other things that I want to do. And I say to every single Black woman in this workshop is to please live your life. Please live your life. What we are giving to our children is priceless, and it is revolutionary. But last year, I witnessed 3 women that were either close friends or women that I worked with pass away before the age of 55 years old. Some of them with children, most of them not with children or with one child. At the top of what it is that they do. And they passed away. They are no longer in this world. And we are seeing this. We are seeing this in the news. We're seeing this more common with young Black women. And young to me is someone who has not even stepped foot in being able to be an elder. All right. They haven't even been able to enjoy middle age yet, who are no longer with us. We have a history of overworking. We have a history of giving to everyone but ourselves. And this work as a homeschooling parent is the ultimate in giving to our family. And I wouldn't change it in the world. The relationship that I have with my daughter has been life-giving. I have connected my identity to this work for so long that at some point, I had to be reminded last year. I told you all I'm the poet laureate of my county, but I was a playwright before. I'm an artist. That's what I do. But I am also good at a lot of things. And a lot of times we are good at stuff and we keep doing it and think that's what we're supposed to do, instead of giving ourselves permission that we were good in this space and it is time now to transition to something else. And that's what I'm doing. I'm transitioning to something else. Every single person that you met today, most of the people that you have met today were people that I met in 2020 who were just like some of you who were just starting homeschooling. And now look at them now. They are imparting information to you, have been homeschooling now for 2 or 3 years now, and are sharing their journey with you because this is something that they have developed over a period of time. I am extremely proud. I'm extremely honored to have every single one of you all here to participate in this day's event. For our presenters, it's astounding, the amount of information, the caliber of information that has been shared. For the participants, Alicia said it best. She said there was no, look at me saying this is not, you didn't say in these words at all. This is not you verbatim, but this is what I heard, is there was no way in hell I was staying in a 6-hour all-day conference. And look at me now, right? And so this is what happens when we are engaged. And a lot of the practices and the things that you saw in these presentations are things that can be implemented in our engagements, our learning engagements with our children. One of the things that I saw occurring, because I was in both sessions at all times, I would have one session on closed caption and another I would be listening to. So I'm multitasking, and every single presenter had some period during their workshop where they were asking questions, allowing the participants to speak, to share, to participate. And those are the things that should be inherent in any type of learning activity that you have with a young person, whether someone you're homeschooling, or if many of you have taken advice from Jade and go on to do your own homeschooling business where you're teaching other homeschooling children. But this was a social experiment for you to see that we can spend long periods of time together learning, and it doesn't have to be the death of us. It doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't have to be academic in the negative sense where someone is lecturing to you. It can be an opportunity for people to share, for people to learn, and for people to meet each other. I'm very excited about all of you all who are embarking on homeschooling now. One thing that you should know, for those of us who were homeschooling before COVID, and Kendra and Alicia, if you want to add anything to it, before COVID, all these resources didn't exist, did they? No, all of these resources, all of these places that you can meet folks and you can engage, you can make a decision. All right, this is the fit for now, but then I might want to, you didn't have all of these options before COVID. So if there was anything positive to be said about COVID, is the fact that we now have conversed about homeschooling to the point where it's almost normalized, right? But there's a responsibility that comes with something being normalized or more commonly discussed. There's an opportunity for now it's an ecosystem that will be developed where you'll have people enter it to try to change some of the cultural norms that were beneficial, and leading them in the direction where they're no longer beneficial. I am always one to admonish parents, and this is outside of homeschooling, or even if we're thinking about this homeschooling landscape, is do not stop being discerning. All right. Just like when we and this is an extreme, and this is maybe a triggering thing to even consider when we think of sexual abuse and we think of cases that we hear about in spaces that should be safe, in a church or by a teacher or these kinds of things. We that's something big and awful. But when we think about what could possibly be awful in homeschooling is when we think about people who are not aware of the culture of what homeschooling can be. All of the things that we discussed today about the possibilities, how it's unique to your family, how it doesn't have to look like a traditional school setting, how assessment doesn't have to be a test, how you can be in the metaverse and a child can be creating, and that they don't have to be tethered to your hip. They could actually be creating and teaching someone else. All of these things and these ideas that we have about the child and parent relationship, about the autonomy of children. When other people come into this culture, bringing with them a mindset that is limited by a traditional school perspective, they are doing damage to what we know as homeschoolers are all the possibilities that can possibly exist. So what I ask you, as someone who is a former homeschooler at this point, and so I don't have a dog in this fight anymore, but what I can say is to be protective and have care for this culture that you are a part of. Every single one of you now, because you've participated in something like this or you've presented in something like this, you are tasked and you are responsible with making sure that you are a culture keeper. We talk a lot about that as Black people being culture keepers, not letting culture vultures coming in. And it's usually about Black and white or people who are non-Black coming in, co-opting things that are inherent to Black people. The same can be said with homeschooling. Okay, and be mindful of that and be respectful of that this is something that existed before COVID, and that there are things in that are sacred in this relationship that we are building with our children when we homeschool. And so that's the closing, y'all. That's what I got as a closing. I would also like to open the floor to give thanks to everyone, and for you to be able to give thanks now that you've shown up for the closing. If you see a presenter or if there was something that took place in the session today that you would like to give thanks, and we can end on that.
I would like to thank everyone that I've sat in on. I'm typically always like doing 100 things, and to just sit and just to learn and receive and think and reflect was just really helpful. So I appreciate all the information and being around ladies that look like me, because that's also a rare thing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kendra. Anyone else? No pressure.
Tracy, I was about to say, I'm thankful that I got to step into the metaverse today, because I've never been in there. And the possibilities now just seem endless. I'm excited for my kids to try this. Oh my gosh. I've got your Calendly down. I've got it written down. Still have your business card. Yes. And it was just nice to be in an affirming space. Thank you.
Yes, I wanted to especially extend my thank you to Khadijah. I remember when I started in this process during the pandemic, and that one phrase that you said, "You are the curriculum," that was it. I was like, oh, I don't need to be running and doing all of these things. And every year, like, that is just the phrase that I hold on to. And thinking about how deep and exciting we are. You know, I don't have to look at anyone's prescriptive. Every day it's so dynamic because I just keep remembering that phrase. And so I know, you know, when you sent out the email, when you mentioned it in the meeting, I was like, no, why did she know? You can't close this down, or you know, you can't archive it or whatever. But I was like, you know, you have just laid this beautiful foundation, you know, and I was like, oh, it's kind of like us graduating, you pushing us out the nest. Like,
yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to fight it, you know,
yes.
But I'm just like, you know, it has been a wonderful space to just even read when people are like, I'm struggling, or today was a great day, or just, everything that you post or anyone posts, it's just been just wonderful. And so, I'm excited to continue that on, because I recognize, I was listening to the playlist and looking at other things, and I was like, you're such a dynamic individual. Yeah, I guess you got to go on and do some other things.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I'm just really hoping that,
I'm
our
waiting for
community
you
comes
to
together.
invite us into the metaverse. I'm ready for, we can leave. What's the man that did Facebook? I think
Zuckerberg?
yeah, I forget his name out of trauma. We can leave Zuckerberg's Facebook and we
That's
can come
right.
into Tracy's metaverse. That's what we're waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, aren't you waiting for that? We can get the invite from you. That class will now be held in the metaverse. That's what I'm waiting for. That's the next step.
Thank you for creating this space and also challenging us to continue in creating more spaces. I recognize, and as a scholar, thank you, because I draw on your work as well too. So, just really thank you for living your truth, but how your truth has fed so many of us who it was great to stumble on that community with that level of quality and someone safeguarding. Because when you put those notes like, we're not selling and we're not doing, I was like, okay, there's someone looking out. That's why I can look at this and not be filled with a lot of junk, because it's not everything showing up. So I recognize how much you have done behind the scenes to keep this going. And so I honor your stepping away. And I'm also, still in between, but I'm hoping we'll continue to come together and create more things.
Oh yeah, you and I are connected. So yeah, we're definitely connected. Thank you for that, Tracy. I appreciate you immensely. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, this is definitely like coming full circle, having attended the first one and then here being able to present at the end. It's surreal, but thank you for the space.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up and being present.
Khadijah, thank you as well, just for being such I don't know, you're like, if there's a wheel and in the middle of the wheel, you're the middle of the wheel and we're all the spokes that you connect. And you just do a dynamic job of giving of yourself in so many ways. And you're a member of so many different communities, and in each one you are literally you're the lighthouse, and so many of us look to you.
Stop.
Thank you.
Stop. Thank you. I love you. I love all of you all. And thank you for that. I didn't want us to give thanks to me. But because I don't want to start crying, because I will. But I would love it if folks could give thanks to your instructors today. If there was anything like an aha moment, as Oprah says, right? Anything that really reminded you about who you are. If anything, that's what I want you to have as a takeaway, that all of you are capable, that the curation of this learning experience for your children does not have to fall on your shoulders solely. You've been given resources and ideas now on how, and if delegation is a thing that you're challenged with, that might be something that you need to address during your deschooling process, is how can you feel comfortable with involving other people or assessing who your resources are, so that this isn't something that you're burdening yourself and believing that you have to do only by yourself, even if you're a single mother or a single parent or a working parent. I don't think some of us even talk about enough. I have worked throughout homeschooling. I do have a partner, but I worked and I actually was underemployed often. And so I had to take multiple jobs because I did not want to stop homeschooling, and I wanted to work in spaces where I could bring my daughter. And so we don't talk enough about that. There are people who homeschool and do work, but it is a sacrifice. But you have to make amends with that. That's, and that is a process in itself. And so was there any aha moment that you had?
Well, I just want to jump in real quick with my thanks, if that's okay. And I have a couple, and one does include you, but you're gonna have to deal with it. Uh, but I think it makes sense in this larger context of being a part of a community. So I'm really grateful that you, as a speaker, that you trusted me to present and to pour out into these women and gentlemen that are so precious. And that means a lot to me because it says that I'm valuable. And we don't always feel valuable in community. I've been homeschooling for a little over 10 years now, and along the journey, I've learned a lot. You know, I'm not the biggest expert of all time, but I've learned a lot. And sometimes we just get so full, and when we feel like there's nowhere to pour out and to pour out in a way that's received, then it messes with you, right? You got to let that thing out. So you have created a space for me to be heard, to be seen, to pour out, to love on others. And you were the one that gave me my first ever speaking engagement in the very first teach-in that you did. So that's beautiful. Someone type in the chat, that's beautiful to me. So thank you. I adore you for that, and for all the work that you do. And I also just want to give thanks to everyone that came to my talk. Again, here we are, folks that are sitting with me and receiving from me. And again, that just adds to feeling valuable, to feeling like I belong. And it is really hard sometimes to find that community. I've worked to create a community for others, but like we talked about in my session, as a leader, you don't always feel like you can take part of what you've created for others. And so a space like this feels like home. So thank you all.
Thank you. I'm bawling like a big old baby. Right. So, if no one else has anything to say, I thank you again, so much for being part of today. You can learn more about all of the speakers. They shared their information. Someone had asked in the group, and I had responded, but just so you know, they call it pausing now, not archiving. That's how long I've been on Facebook, and I have archived many a group. But pausing, so it allows you to come back to the group if you need to. But for those who are members in the group, all of the information in the group is there. So you can do searches. If I saw some people say, I just got here. Well, then good. You can do some searching and see what some of the conversations were. It won't be anything new posted in it, but it's still, there are tons of things. And in the early days of the group, I was able to tag. I told you all, I am so anal, like with organizing and folders and all that stuff. And so in the early days, you could actually find things by hashtags, but now you can really do keyword searches in the group for any questions that you have, but the group will still remain up. It will probably be unpaused in maybe a year when the book comes out, so we can share that with folks, but it won't be managed. So there's not going to be anything. I was manually admitting people in. You all will be amazed with how many non-Black people try to join the group. I don't know what their intentions are. People who are just, it required that. And just as Tracy said, that was really my profession, was a bouncer. I think I did that. I apologize to those who paid for this conference who I bounced from the sessions today because you didn't have your names and you weren't on my registration list. But I'm really particular of that. I've been in Zooms, I've been in groups where there have been people coming in, racial violence that has taken, just calling people words and names and just trying to come up and jack up a vibe. And so I just I can't do that anymore. I didn't want to delegate that to someone else. I didn't trust, it's a lot of work. And so that's why the group is being paused. But thank you for being part of it. And thank you, Abby. I guess, because it was you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm so glad you're here for the closing, and I will be sharing the links with all of you all. It will not be edited links as in previous teach-ins where I literally had edited each workshop and give it an intro and a closing. The links that I'll be sharing with you all will be directly to the Zoom link, and they will only be available for a certain amount of time, but I'll include that all in an email. But everyone who registered for the entire conference will get access, particularly because I know that there are some folks that did not get to get in because I didn't know who you were and I didn't let you into a session. I'm so sorry. And so with that, I wish you all a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you for spending time with us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.